Hi everyone, welcome to the beginning of the series where we're going to build a voting system. Thank you for joining and hopefully you will learn a lot along the way. Now in this first episode we'll start really slowly with just a sandbox project where we're going to take a look at what it takes and how to reason about building a voting system, right? It's not a complicated thing, it's just how to structure your thoughts or like where to begin. First thing to begin with, let's create a project, right? So I'm gonna look for a C# project and I want a console application, right? So I'm not gonna start with ASP.NET Core. I'm just gonna start with a console app. Usually when you learn programming, you're gonna start with a console application with a hello world, and then you're gonna build a few things to learn about the language, the syntax, etc. Right? So we're gonna start at this same place. So we're gonna grab the console app. Let's click next, and then we'll have a project name. Let's just call it sandbox, right? Because this is like where we are gonna just play around. But the solution name, I'm still gonna call it a voting system, right? And let's create this. All right. So here we have our program.cs file open, nothing in our project. If we double click on sandbox, we will open the CS project file, and this is just information about our project here, right? So if we'll have folders, etc., some of this stuff will get recorded here, and this file is usually generated automatically if there are any dependencies. So if we're gonna import a library that someone else has built, it's gonna show up here in the dependencies and it's gonna pop up here, right? But we're not concerned with any of that. For now at least, we want to look at this program class and just basically run the program first and make sure that it actually runs. And we should just see hello world output here, and that's exactly what we get. Let's go ahead and close that. Now let's just give a think about what it takes to build a voting system. And usually if somebody asks a question, the easiest vote to take or the easiest answer to answer is basically a yes or no, right? So we're not. There are many possibilities with voting, like multiple options. Maybe you can cast 2 votes. Maybe your votes are of different strength, right? So if you have a platform, and for example, you are a well-respected user, your vote might be a little bit more credible than someone who has just joined. Okay, so there are all these aspects to having a voting system, but always when building these things, it's important to start with the very basics, right? So let's go ahead and create yes and no votes, right? So for every person that says yes, we want to increment a counter, or for every person that says no, we want to increment a counter. So it's essentially an integer, it's just a number, right? So let's create these 2 counters. Yes counter, and we'll set it to 0, and then we'll have a no counter, and we'll set it to 0 as well. Now, as generally with all programming, why we do these things is a big side effect of this is we need to display the information that the computer has to the user, right? So let's go ahead and give out some statistics regarding how many counts each has and who has won the vote, right? So instead of hello world here, I'll just say yes counts, and what we can do is we can put the yes, we can put a plus sign and the yes counter here, and this will add the number onto the string right here. Okay, and C# has syntax for string interpolation. If we put a $sign in front of the string, this allows us to use curly brackets, and what this will do is it sort of allows us to avoid using all these plus signs and just put the whatever variable we want into the string, and then if we run the program we get the same result. Okay, so yes counts, and let's say no counts, and we'll put the no counts here as well, so no counter. So we'll see how many counts each vote has got, and now let's determine the winner. So how will we determine the winner? So there is 3 scenarios really. The yes counter wins, the no counter wins, or there is a draw, right? So let's go ahead and use if statements. This is Boolean logic. This is how we figure out the difference when comparing things, right? So let's go ahead and make an if statement, and we'll say if the yes counter is bigger than the no counter, then we want to say that the yes counter has won, right? So let's put a console write line here. Or let's remove the counter part. We'll just say yes won. And then we'll put an else if statement here. And basically, if this statement executes, then the rest of these statements won't execute. And this is what I'm kind of aiming for. So only one of these will execute, right? And then by the end of this, we'll put an else as well, because this is where the draw is going to go. Because here we're going to check if the no counter is bigger than the yes counter. And then we can just say no here. Okay, so if the no counter is bigger than the yes counter, then no has won, and otherwise it's a draw. Okay, so we have 0 votes. Let's go ahead and run this, and it's a draw. If the yes counter goes up, yes won, so we can go ahead put a 2 here, and the no has won. Okay, so the next step that we can take it from here is displaying some additional information. For example, like percentage of the votes, right? So how many percent is 2 out of 3 votes for the no counter? It is, right? So what's the percentage? So let's go ahead and try to calculate that. So to calculate the percentage, we first have to get the total of all the counters. So let's grab the yes counter, the no counter, and now we have the total. And once we have the total amount, we just have to divide one of the counters, or rather each of the counters, by the total, and then we essentially get a ratio. And then once we multiply that ratio by 100, we get a percentage, right? So it's a certain amount out of the total, and then we get a ratio multiplied by 100, we get the percentage, right? So let's go ahead, copy these 2 lines, and put them here. And I'll move them down by 1. Okay, so instead of the counter here, I will say not in Russian, but rather percent. I'll copy percent, and I'll put it here as well. So let's go ahead and do what I just said. Let's grab the yes counter, put it here, and we'll divide it by the total. Okay, and then we'll multiply it by 100. Let's copy this thingy right here, put it here, and we'll just replace the yes counter with the no counter. Okay, and now all I want to do is put a comma in these outputs and just say that the percentage is, and again I'll use C# string interpolation with the curly brackets, and I'll just put the yes percent here, and I'll just add the percentage sign on the end. I can copy this bit here, paste it at the bottom here, and just say no percent here as well. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. And we get 0%, and this is totally fine. So this is just about how things get executed. So if you remember basic maths, addition and subtraction are done after multiplication and division. So here we have division and multiplication. So division is done first, but what you have to bear in mind is that the yes counter is an integer and the total is also an integer, right? So for example, if the total was, we'll set this to 0, so the yes counter is 1 and the total is 1, this will be a division of 1 by 1, which is going to be 1, and multiplied by 100, it will be 100, right? So in this scenario, we do get the 100%, but anytime if we even go to sort of 50-50, we'll get 0. And this is because integers don't have sort of decimal point precision, and this is where we either have to use floats or doubles, and doubles are preferred in C#. If we, for example, hover over this 100, you can see that it's a type of int32, right? So it's an integer. And we also have a long, which is of type integer 64. It just occupies more space in memory, right? So how do we turn this into a double? So it can't be a double after this division has been complete, because at that point we already lose the precision. Okay, so when I say precision, I mean the decimal point precision, because 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, right? So integers can't store anything past that point. So what we can do, we can convert this to a double, but then we get an error, and if we look, cannot implicitly convert type double to an integer, right? And this is because here we declare the type. So if we change this to a variable, this error will go away, because now the yes percent is a double. Or we can type out the double here. Okay, so I'll keep it a variable, and for the no percent, I'll keep it a variable as well, because we're about to run into the same thing. Now, another thing that we can do is make this number a double and do the multiplication for the yes counter first, and then we get the percentage straight away. Okay, so let's remove this double here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a 0.0. Okay, and now if we hover over it, we can see that's a type of double. And if you're wondering if you can make this a floating point, you can put a F, and now it's a system.single, a single precision floating point number. And if we put an L after it, it's gonna make it an int64, right? So these are just a few tricks to make the conversion sort of happen with the number that you declare. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this multiplication, and we're gonna move it to the yes counter here, and we're just gonna add the .0 on the end here. And what this will do, when this integer is multiplied by a double, after it will be a double. So the total is still an integer, but on the top value here, it will be a double. And if it makes more sense for you, you can put brackets around here, but you can see they're grayed out. And if we hover over the bracket, it will tell you that it's a double, right? So the result of this multiplication will be a double, and our yes percent will be a double after as well. So now with any luck, if we multiply by 100 double first and then divide by the total, we get the 50%. Okay, so that's nice. Let's remove the brackets, because I don't think they are needed there all that much. Let's go ahead and put the multiplied by 100 for the no percent as well. Let's run this again, and we get the 50-50. Let's go for a little bit more, maybe 2 and 1 out of 3. Okay, so you can see that we're getting the 33.33 and 66.66. Now what we can do here is, probably a human wouldn't want to look at a number like this, and this is why usually we round up to 2 decimal points, because past that it's already like minuscule, and this is really just a resemblance of infinity. Okay, and at the end here, it's the limitation of the memory that a double can use for the floating points, right? So let's go ahead and round it up to 2 decimal places. For this, we're gonna import a math object that will come from a system library, right? So let's go ahead, and below here, what I will do is just say var yes percent round up. Okay, since I'm just gonna be rounding it up, I'll say math.round, and if we hover over math, it's a system.math class, right? So you can press F12 on the math class, and you can see the namespace that it's coming from. Same for us, the namespace. We are in Sandbox project, so when people build C#, they will have their own C# namespaces, and this system namespace is just part of the tools that are available in C#, right? So if you think about a language like C, the father of all languages, it basically has nothing to begin with, and then people build libraries, and these are just levels of abstractions, which we're essentially going to go through the same motions here. Okay, but coming back to our voting system, right? So yes percent round up, we want to go ahead and round up. Let's go ahead and close off this method. We have an error, doesn't matter. Let's click on the round, press F12, and here we will see a bunch of different implementations for this. And you can click on these pluses and read through the description of what this method does. But essentially, cutting it short, we can provide a decimal. It's also a little bit faster if you just play around with it. But we provide a value, and then we provide up to how many digits you want to round up. So this is essentially your value, and this is your precision. Okay, so I said 2 decimal points, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say yes %, and I will do 2 decimal points. Okay, now let's just use this here for now. I'm not going to do it for the no %. I just want to see the difference. And here you can see it rounds up to 2 decimal points. And what I want to actually do is I just want to incorporate this in here. So what I will do is I'll grab this yes counter in total and replace it with a yes %. And I'm just going to grab this statement. I'm going to move it to the yes % here. I'll paste it here as well, and I'll just replace the no counter here. I'll delete this yes % roundup. I'll delete this gunk on the end. I'll put the yes % back where it was. Okay, so now for the both percentages, we're going to have a rounded up value that's nice to look at. So this pretty much covers a few aspects here. We essentially have 2 counters that we can vote for. So 2 decisions that we can make. So we can either vote for yes or we can vote for no. And then we're displaying some information, general information like how many actual votes we have, who won, based on the logic that we have, and then the percentage, right? Just in case some analytics person wants to look at it. The next natural step would be adding another option to vote for. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and add something like maybe, right? We have yes, no, and then maybe. People like that one a lot. So maybe counter equals 3, and it doesn't have to be 3. It can be anything you want. But this is what I will use. Now we have to go through the same motions of adding it to the total. Let's grab the maybe counter. Oh, add it to the total. And then we'll have to calculate the percentage for it. So let's put the maybe counter here and maybe %. Let's copy this line and let's say maybe counts. We'll put the maybe % on the end here and the maybe counter in the center here, okay? And now for the winning conditions, right? So this might get a little bit tricky, but if you're not a skilled programmer, you might want to pause the video here and you might want to try to figure out how to display the maybe condition of winning and the draw as well, or you can just watch me do it, right? So the way I would reason about it, right, if the yes counter is bigger than the no counter, then the next logical step is to check if the yes counter is bigger than the maybe counter, right? So if the yes counter is bigger than the maybe counter, let's go ahead and say that the yes has won. Next, we'll have a similar condition to this one, where we'll have to check, right, if the yes counter is not bigger than the maybe counter, maybe the maybe counter is bigger than the yes counter, right? And then we will have a draw condition on the end here. So let's go ahead and say draw here. And for the maybe counter, let's go ahead and say maybe here. And now we want to do the same sort of steps, but for the no counter. So let's go ahead and put them here. Let's say that the no counter is bigger than the maybe counter. Then we can say that no has won. And then if the maybe counter is bigger than the no counter, maybe has won. And otherwise, it's a draw. So let's remove this bit here. And the final condition that might be a little bit obscure is if basically the yes and no counter are equal and the maybe is higher than the both, then what we have to do here is basically check if the maybe counter is bigger than either of them. So we can just grab the yes counter, because then we can basically say that maybe is indeed bigger than both of them because those two are equal, right? So we can go ahead and say that maybe wins here on the end. And another thing that might trip you up is this else if. this is essentially what an else if statement is. So we can go ahead and remove this indentation here and go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. First of all, I want to test out this condition here. So let's go ahead and say that the maybe counter is going to be at 3, the yes counter is going to be 2, 2. So maybe it wins. Let's go ahead and make the yes counter win. Okay, yes wins. Now, we are actually going to be facing a problem here of having excess percentage. So what I mean by that is, if you take a look at 22.22 and 33.33 and 44.44, we essentially have an excess of 1%. So 1% is bleeding out from our roundups. So the fact that we want to display the percentage in a human readable way, we're actually losing 1% of precision, right? So this is a point where we have to basically decide, right, where are we going to put this one loose percent, okay? So let's go ahead and actually first calculate this excess, right? So we can see it first, right? So let's go ahead and grab the excess, and we are gonna first start off with 100%, right? So we have 100%. Let's go ahead and minus the yes counter, minus the no percent, and minus the maybe percent. Okay, so here we have the excess. Let's go ahead and just say console.writeLine, and we're just gonna say excess, put a semicolon in the end. Okay, let's run this, and the excess seems a little bit too big, and that's because I included the yes counter here instead of the yes percent. So let's replace that there. And okay, so you can see that the excess is a little bit too large from what we would expect, because we have these 44.44. But this is a thing with doubles and floating points. Sometimes they do lose precision like this. And what we'll have to do is we'll just have to round this up as well. So let's go ahead and grab the rounding up logic. We'll still round it up to 2. I'll remove everything inside there. I'll grab this line and I will just put it in here where we're going to provide the value. Let's run this again. And now we just have this clean excess of 0.01%, right? And just in case it's still unclear what this excess is, we can go ahead and say console writeLine total percentage. And let's go ahead and supply the total percentage here so we can see what it is before we add on the excess, right? So this is a sort of a debugging console log, so we can actually see what is happening. Okay, so total percentage, we add up all the percentage, and you can see that we get the 99.99, and if we add the 0.1%, we're basically going to complete the 100%. Okay, so this is where the problem arises, right? Where do we actually want to put the excess? Well, this will really depend on the results. Okay, so because the excess is sort of lost in the precision, I think it's okay and reasonable to sort of say, right, if it's a draw between some of these conditions or a winner, we can just either pop it onto the winner because he's winning anyway with the loss of precision, or if it's a draw, we can just pop it onto the loser because I doubt 0.1% is going to do much. Right, so let's go ahead and move these statistics that we pop out to the bottom here, because this is where we're going to be doing the addition of the excess, right? So let's remove this line on the bottom and let's go through these one by one, right? So if yes has won, let's grab the yes percent and let's add the excess. Okay, so what we can do is we can assign a whole value of yes percent plus the excess, but a shorthand for this operation. So a shorthand is kind of like either sugar syntax or a shortcut. Basically, this has been written too many times, and a word less written is time saved. So basically, plus equals excess just adds this value onto yes percentage, and this operation works the same with strings as well. So we have the yes percentage. Let's go ahead and do the same for the maybe here, where we are going to add the excess onto the winner that's winning regardless. Here we have the draw, and the draw here is between the yes and maybe, so I'm going to say that the no percentage can go ahead and receive this excess. Okay, moving on. For the no one, let's go ahead and add this to the no percentage. Maybe percentage can receive the excess here, and for this draw, it will be the yes counter, the yes percentage that will receive this. Okay, the yes percent. And now we have the maybe counter, right? So if the maybe counter wins, we can add the excess here, and if it's a draw between all of them, then I'm gonna go ahead and say that we don't want to add the excess onto anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if this works now. So it looks like the excess has been added on. However, the double or floating point precision has been a little bit a bit of a letdown here. So let's go ahead and just fix this up a little bit. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the math roundup function. We're gonna go all the way down here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop it in to here, and we are just going to remove this calculation of the percentage, and we're just gonna say yes counter here. Yes percent, and we're just gonna, before outputting for the last time, we're just gonna round up the percentage. So let's go ahead and do the same for the no percent and maybe percent, and I guess it won't hurt to do it for the rest of the percentages as well. So let's go ahead and put them here. Now let's go ahead and run this. Okay, and here you can see that the excess is added onto the percentage nicely, and what we essentially have right now is we're adding on another condition, which also gives us a bit of a problem with this excess percentage. We're still able to display the winners, but you can see if we are going to add a fourth condition, it's going to become apparent that this if statement right here is going to grow pretty large, not only lengthwise, but also widthwise, right? So there's going to be a few more lines of code here, and we're duplicating these console outputs. Now, this will be it for this episode in terms of just remembering how to write C#. What we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to optimize this a little bit. Nevertheless, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. If you're wondering about how I do all my keybinds and stuff, watch my Visual Studio 2019 setup. And as always, see you in the next episode.